Good evening and Happy New Year to all those watching. Are we ready, Dana? Okay. Sorry, I should have checked that first. Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. It's the organizational meeting of January 3rd, 2023. Mr. Baker, would you like to do the roll call, please, sir?
Ms. Orr?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. Next point on the agenda, executive session. Is there a need, Mr. Weckbach, for executive session? And if so, under what waivers under the ARC?
Yes, I would request a motion from the board that we go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation, and in accordance with G1 to discuss the compensation of public employees.
I motion
Go ahead.
that we go into executive sessions for the reasons detailed by Mr. Weckbach.
I'll second.
All right. Will there be any additional people attending?
Just regular township staff.
Okay. Mr. Baker, vote, please.
Ms. Orge?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. We enter into executive session at 6:02. We'll be back shortly. Thank you. All right, I'll call us back into session at 7 p.m. For the Board of Trustees meeting, organizational meeting, January 3rd, 2023. Mr. Baker, you want to call the roll?
Ms. Orge?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. Mr. Weckbach, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
All right, part of the charge of what we do today is elect a president, vice president. At this point, we'll just go ahead and open nominations for election of president. And just thank you for everyone for the year I've had doing this. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'd like to nominate Ms. Kathy Ulrich to be.
Gee golly, thank you.
Are there any other nominations?
I will nominate myself, Dan Unger.
Well, if you can do that, I'll nominate me.
Okay. So I guess we just have a vote then, is that? So we have two nominees. Do we need to have a motion for each one or just a motion?
Well, I think one motion will take care of the other motion, but you can have multiple motions. But I think if one motion passes, the other one.
Okay, since we have two motions on Ms. Ulrich, I'll go ahead and motion that we nominate Ms. Ulrich to be president for this term.
Am I second that motion?
All right, and then we'll go ahead and have a vote.
Can we have discussion?
Sure.
Are you prepared to do this?
After a year of watching Matt and learning from Matt, I hope I can guide his guide of leadership. I hope I can do it. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussions? All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orrick?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
I will vote for Kathy, so that's yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. So that passes 3-0. Ms. Ulrich, we'll do the musical chairs here after vice president. Now we go to election of vice president. I'd like to nominate Mr. Dan Unger to be vice president.
I'll second that.
I'd like to nominate Matt Wallert.
I didn't know if Matt wanted it. Did you want it?
I think. I mean, their titles. I think we kind of work is we're like a hand.
Okay, I didn't
missing
know
two
if,
fingers. I guess I don't know. Mr. Unger, I mean,
Are you interested in being vice president?
sure. Are you?
I'm fine either way.
I am too.
I'm glad to rotate the positions, though.
You were vice president this year, correct?
Right. I was vice president for 22.
Okay.
But I was president, so I don't know.
That's why I didn't know if that's. I don't know how that role reversal.
I'm fine doing it again.
Okay,
if you
all right.
prefer not to.
Yeah. I think that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and motion that Mr. Unger for vice president.
I'll second.
All right. Discussion.
None.
None.
All right. Vote.
Ms. Orrick?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. Mr. Unger will be vice president, and I think we all kind of work well together as one. Anyway, do we want to switch all this now?
No, I don't want to take your chair right now.
You should run the meeting from the center chair.
Yeah.
Oh, because it takes effect immediately.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we just bear with us in TV land, I will relocate.
So if we want to extend on your allegory of the hand, Jeff Baker could be yet another finger. And since Dana and all the work she does behind the scenes to make everything happen. She could be the thumb so we can, have a great grasp on what's going on in Colerain. So
I saw him meet down here.
It's okay. You're that close. I'm only wanting to take this chair because it is absolutely freezing right here. It is, I have to wear a sweater, so you will love it.
Well, I was here for several years.
Well, I didn't know, were you freezing in that spot?
I found it rather warm.
You know how I get cold. I am.
All right, Madam President.
Yes, now do we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Make sure you're speaking to the mic.
Now do we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Not on.
Oh, now do we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we usually do the moment of silence that you started. I'd like to continue that, and I would like everybody to just honor life, love the ones that are around you. We lost two beautiful people in my life the week of Christmas, and I just would love everybody to cherish everybody in their life and respect life. Okay, organizational items.
yes,
Mr.
board.
Wetbach.
Tonight we have several organizational items that we do at the start of each year. The first item is a resolution authorizing the advance of funds related to the Community Development Block Grant. So about a year and a half ago, the county changed the way that they moved their process for actually allowing us to get reimbursed when it comes to Community Development Block Grant projects, in that we have to incur the cost first and then get reimbursed by the county second. Because of that, that creates just a financial imbalance in that fund. And so we need to authorize this advance so that we can have operating cash in that fund throughout the year, and then the dollars move back at year end. So I would recommend adoption of the resolution.
Madam President, I motion that we authorize the advance of funds from CDBG.
Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Mr. Baker?
No discussion from me.
Oh,
No discussion.
Mr. Wallert?
Yes?
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Ms. Orge?
yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is, again, another organizational item. This is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds. So annually, the Auditor of State requires us to adopt a resolution that lists out the maximum amount that we will transfer from one fund to another. So there are three transfers that were proposed in the budget: $497,824 from the general fund to the park fund, $128,780 from the general fund to the community center fund, and then $800,000 from the fire fund to the special assessment fire bonds fund. What you'll note is that the $800,000 is more than we need for the debt service. We just left that number as it was in budget, but we'll only transfer the exact amount that are required to actually pay the cost of the debt service for this year. So with that brief intro, I will recommend adoption of the resolution.
I motion that we adopt the resolution authorizing the transfer of township monies to other township funds.
And I'll second that.
Any discussions?
Yeah, I know that, in speaking of the kind of overage that we put in, Mr. Unger spoke of this last meeting, it being a way to kind of pay down earlier the debt, and we're going to have that discussion soon with, I plan on amending the rules of trustee to put in there that we have every 6 month kind of long-term financial planning meeting so that we could talk to issues like Mr. Unger brought up with that, which I think is important.
But we do know that we can't do anything for prepayment until 7 to 10 years on this particular loan, correct?
Correct. Usually there's a call date, and we'll have a couple opportunities at that.
And the bond sale has happened.
Yes, the bond sale happened. It was finalized on December 29th. Those dollars hit our accounts, and they are officially here and ready to be used for the construction of our fire stations.
And when we discussed this several months ago, there was a
Yes.
chart that sort of estimated how those monies would be dispersed. When you bring those bonds to us for signature, could you provide an updated actual chart to the board on that, so we can actually see how much is going towards the principal and the interest, and what the overages that we might apply to earlier payment, or at least setting that money aside for those purposes?
Yep.
And if Mr. McAravy and his team can get us 4% interest still on that money, it would be great. Do we call a vote, Mr. Baker? Mr. Baker?
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is a motion to authorize the purchase of capital equipment and vehicles according to the attached Schedule A, which you will find in your agenda packet on page 11. Annually, we adopt appropriations. We then bring forward a list of capital items that we plan on buying. You all approve said capital purchases. Once that capital purchase is approved by you all, we then go out, get a purchase order. Once we get the purchase order, then we actually work with the vendor to build out the specific specs and get the actual purchase put in place. So there are a couple steps along the process. This is second step along the way. The first was the adoption of temporary appropriations, and we've listed out all of the capital items in here, so I'm happy to answer any questions on those or any questions in general about the motion, but I would recommend adoption of the motion.
I motion that we authorize the purchase of capital equipment and vehicles according to the attached Schedule A.
I'll second.
Mr. Baker?
Discussion. I've got a discussion item. On the Colerain Avenue bus stops, I recall that there was a match to that.
Yes.
Is that match blended into this, or have we received the match?
So half of that is our match.
Right.
So the anticipated costs were originally $427,000.
Right.
You will see on your next trustee meeting, we actually received quotes on that already, and the actual cost is going to be less. It's going to be closer to $250,000. So we will be saving more money on that than we originally anticipated, and half of that is going to be matched dollar for dollar from SORTA.
So will that, because we have a reduced cost, does that reduce the money that they approved at the?
It could. So we also have the Colerain Avenue streetscape project that's going on this year, a portion of which includes bus stops. And when we submitted our original application to SORTA, we included both north and south to give us that flexibility that should these projects come in under, that we could repurpose some of those dollars to the southern portion. So we're going to try to use every single dollar that we can out of that roughly $200,000 grant that we got from SORTA.
Okay, just to let the public know, the streetscape is 1.625 million.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where if we have a couple $100,000, we can put it towards that.
Yes. And on top of that, we did just get notice from SORTA that they're giving us $1 million toward that project as well. So we're going to be offsetting a lot of that project with outside dollars.
And the Fort Colerain, we get a match for that, correct, also?
That is 100% funded by, well, I shouldn't say 100%. 10,000 of that is not funded by the state of Ohio. The other 390,000 is.
So if anybody's
state of Ohio.
following along with us on these high volume.
Mr. Weckbeck, I appreciate kind of the way we've done this with having the capital equipment and vehicles up front with the Schedule A. That's a little bit different than we've done in the past.
Yeah.
And we all know that sometimes things change. And maybe one of these items, maybe something, God forbid, something happens that's disastrous and we need to reallocate money. Each one of these things will, in addition to being passed in the budget, in addition to being passed through this motion, would also need to individually be passed for a purchase, correct?
Yes, there
Okay,
would need to be a
so that
purchase order.
if we decide, hey, we can't pay for this year, we're gonna kick it down the road, maybe, I don't know, some kind of park infrastructure, I don't know.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if you all recall last year, we actually had to come back to you all and ask to increase the capital purchase for mowers because the price of mowers had gone up from when we were building budget in September of the fall or prior year to when we were actually ready to make the purchase. So these are maximum dollar amounts that we'll spend on any of these items. If we need to spend more, we'll have to come back to you all and ask for you all to increase that capital purchase.
And I thank you again for kind of laying that out because I thought that the previous way that we did things with, well, it was in the budget. And I wasn't quite comfortable with that. And I think that this offers us, 2 and 3 looks. I mean, to say something's in the budget when it's a $48 million budget, I mean, that's a lot of stuff to look through and to remember And I think that this is a much cleaner way for us to continue to provide feedback to you, I think. And I appreciate that.
Sure.
I don't have any other comments.
What? Okay, Mr.
Mr. Roach,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is very similar to the last one in that it is a specific capital equipment purchase. This one is for a drone. I just gathered the sense that this might be worth talking about more in depth amongst members of the board, as this is newer emerging technology that hasn't been widely embraced by local governments. It is one that our police department felt was worth having a conversation over, so we broke it out individually. You'll find in your agenda packet that there is actually a memo that was prepared by Lieutenant Chris Phillips that kind of details some of the need and usefulness of said drone. It would be potentially really impactful when we're doing things like missing person unit investigations, being able to have that extra set of eyes in the sky. We could also then repurpose it for fire grounds if we needed to. So if we needed to quickly, say, get a view or vantage point of a roof to see if it's likely to collapse, or the exterior of a building on the other side of the building that may be in a steep hillside, we could easily send the drone out to get that footage. Beyond that, there's also some potential utility for our own in-house facilities department, that if they needed to check some tuck pointing on a high ceiling or on a roof, they would be able to send the drone out and get those images a little crisper and cleaner. But for sake of conversation, wanted to introduce that to you all. This is a motion to authorize the purchase of capital equipment, a drone in the amount of $20,000, and I would recommend adoption of the motion, and happy to field any questions or conversation.
I'll go ahead and motion to purchase the drone just to get it to the floor.
And I'll second.
Okay, discussions. I'm going to maybe take this one. When we had the police open house, I asked each Pacific police officer that was doing an exhibit to their area, and I talked to you about this also, and the need for a drone for the public. Hamilton County no longer has a helicopter. It was a $3 million a year operation. They didn't see the need for just that and the cost of the helicopter. So we do not have a helicopter. I think you said the nearest one was Columbus, Ohio. And if we have a search and rescue, we don't have that availability to us right now. So that was imperative to me, that I thought this was a unique opportunity for $20,000 to aid our police in several different types of investigations. And they did say it's something, there's going to be so many people that do operate it. It has to be in somebody's truck car. It takes, 5 to 10 minutes to get it activated. So it's not like something somebody can take out and start spying on other people. It has to be signed out. There's only certain people that are allowed to use it because they have to go through the training. So I think every police officer I talked to at that open house was 100% for this drone.
So in theory, I kind of support the idea of this. I guess that my reluctance is I'd like to see a drone policy before we actually purchase it, or before it, I don't know if it's cart before the horse, before it actually gets put into use. Ms. Ulrich just said it'd be in somebody's car who's training, who can use it. I want to have that codified. And I don't know if that's something that you would like us to wait before we vote on the drone, or, and again, I haven't heard from Mr. Unger on this, but I think it's imperative that before we use it the very first time, that we have an idea what our policy is, and that we probably need to revisit that on a continual basis as things evolve.
And I wish Chief Cordy was here, because there was specific parameters, exactly what you said, how many people are going to be able to go through the training, whose cars it's going to be. They don't have all that in writing of yet, but you're the procedure, but I think you're right, we should have something.
Yeah, as a legislative body, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that there are boundaries on how this is going to be used.
That's fair. I absolutely, that is a fair statement. And so, again, we haven't given Mr. Unger an opportunity to speak yet, but depending on the pleasure of the board, if it is even to just table this item until we have something like that, that is something that we can go back to police and work with them on a policy on, to get something so that you all would be able to react to how it would be used, when it would be used, and all those other special details.
And the same with the fire department too, their procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a few comments. Chief sent this out a month ago, and I talked to him about it, and there's several things I found missing in his report, and one of them was a drone policy, like Mr. Waller said. And because the three of us can't talk to each other outside of meetings, I reached out to Hamilton County, and I do have their unmanned aircraft system policy. And the first item A is the unmanned aircraft system, a definition of it, but the very next item is privacy. And I believe that people have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their yards. Now, you know, the auditor goes past your house and takes a picture of your house. It's a still picture, and the auditor does not have any enforcement mechanism. He's just inventorying county properties. There's a lot of private agencies such as Google or whoever else is taking pictures, but that's not the state and that's not the police department. Hamilton County's policy pretty much spells out that there needs to be a privacy factor to this. And, you know, I don't expect to have a police drone flying over my backyard, Kathy's backyard, or Matt's backyard. It talks about how to avoid those, but are we going to, I wish Chief Cordy was here because I had talked to him about this previously, and if we fly over somebody's property, are we flying over their property without a warrant when we have the camera turned on and we're not looking for anything specific, but we're flying over property without a warrant, and what kind of legal situation that might put us in? When we have the drone out on site, it's pretty much obviously going to require having another officer or another firefighter to respond because they are going to be there as a drone operator, and I don't know until we would have a policy that we have the personnel in place to handle that. Does that mean we have to send a second or third car out on a call? To Kathy's point about Hamilton County getting rid of their helicopters, which I wish they would have kept them because I think it's good on the county level as a part of shared services that somebody's funding a helicopter, and especially when it's not us. But they did go out, and I want to say they bought 10 drones. And so the taxpayers of Colerain Township are already paying for all the drones that Hamilton County owns, and so we would be buying another one just for our department. I don't know why we can't have a shared services agreement. One of the other things when this came up 3 years ago, when former Administrator Mills brought it up, is he talked about using it for code enforcement. And now, part of our police, we've moved our code enforcement operation into our police department, and I just don't, as much as I'd like to go behind people's houses and clean up the messes that they obviously have that their neighbors complain about, we cannot do that. This is a liberty-loving Colerain Township, and I don't want to be flying over and looking at somebody's backyard without a warrant. So we would have to have somewhere in a policy where if we were ever going to use this for code enforcement, we would need warrants. So at this time, with no policy in place and with Chief not here to explain it, I do not intend to support it. One other comment is as we ride around or fly around and gather footage, is that subject to public information request? And that's just another thing we don't know. I don't know that state law allows if that's a public information, something you could request or not. So there's a myriad of reasons that I'm not going to support this. And my last question is, we just discussed this a week ago with the flock cameras, and you know, I listened to my other two trustees, and it seems like a lot of those reasons that we rejected the flock cameras were the same reasons I would reject this drone at this time. And so I have to ask you, are these flock cameras coming back too sometime soon, or?
So if a trustee makes a request for us to continue the discussion on that, we will put that on the agenda out of deference to the board. So
Okay.
I did
that's
not
fine.
reject the flock cameras.
and
I
to
mean, but collectively,
I did not.
to maybe address a couple of the questions in there. So in terms of public records, they would be a public record just like any of our dash cam footage or other footage that our police officers have in their body camera are subject to public records. So, you know, they would need to be redacted and what have you. So for example, right now, if a body cam captures video that includes, say, license plates that are not germane to the crime at hand, those license plates are typically required to be blurred under public records law. And so that's where we do spend some time when it comes to some of these public records requests around body cam footage, is actually blurring out and censoring the areas. You know, let's say there's a minor somewhere in the scene, we're not allowed to have the minor's face, things like that. So I would imagine that just like body cam footage, that if we had a drone, any of that footage would be subject to public records and open records requests. When it comes to a policy, that's where I think, the deference to the board in terms of putting things in there that if, for example, we do not want it to be used on code enforcement matters or to not be used on police matters unless there was a warrant involved is something we could write into policy. We have had drones used in the past. Now, it hasn't been our own staff that have been operating them. There are a couple drones available through mutual aid through Hamilton County. We've used them on fire scenes, and we've used them, for example, when we had our COVID-19 testing site here. Woodlawn actually sent theirs out, and they took a lot of aerial footage of what we were doing so that we could learn a little bit and know how we could improve in terms of our traffic flow. Now, that wasn't private property that we were looking at. That was public property, and so that was our decision. But just, for example, those have been a couple. I can't remember if we talked about getting the drone deployed and it didn't make it there in time through mutual aid, but we had an issue with some individuals that were suspected to have been lost within a gas pipe at Rumpke. And, luckily they were found. They were completely fine, but I think we had debated on trying to get the drone out there to actually investigate that pipe quickly, because if there was something, say, noxious fumes or a collapse somewhere along there, we didn't want to risk, further damage to our own staff. So those are just a couple of examples of times when it has been deployed from, say, another jurisdiction that we haven't personally navigated it, but it has already been in use in Colerain. But what I'm hearing from the board is that this is not ready for prime
Well, I
time
mean, we can
without.
vote on it, and we can bring it back next month if you want.
Sure, and maybe it comes back first as a policy around a drone and not a purchase.
And I truly believe, and I would agree with Kathy, there is 101 great uses for it, and it would probably be a very helpful thing, but just the expectation of privacy of our residents
Yeah.
and
Hamilton County uses
Kind of
cages.
outweighs
I mean,
all that.
Cincinnati Area Geographical Information Systems, they take a picture and you can zoom in, satellite, you can do the topography on every,
that's a static picture, that's
right,
not
but, and then, but
ongoing
Google
live
Earth, I mean,
footage.
you can go on any satellite
That's
and
not
look
the
at.
state.
Right, the difference is that's not a law enforcement mechanism. So I guess my question would be not but to Mr. Solomon, would it be different if it were owned and operated by public services or a fire department as opposed to the police department? Because the police department's a law enforcement agency, and the fire department clearly,
In what respect, as a public record? No.
in terms of evidence and data that's,
Well, obviously, evidence has got different, if there's an investigation, it's part of an investigation that's pending criminally, then that would have a different protection than a regular public record. So in some cases, yes, other cases, no. But generally, if it's not involved with a criminal investigation, I would say it's going to be treated like a
right, and that's I think needs to be fleshed out in the policy. So if we're using it, there's a tie-up on a road somewhere, and we're using it to fly over there, and we look at the detail and we say, aha, this person has marijuana plants growing in their backyard. I think that's problematic when it comes to, I don't want them to be able to do that, but I think it's problematic when it comes to civil liberties and protections from the state. I think that based upon kind of what Mr. Unger said and a little bit of what Ulrich said, I think that maybe the thing to do would be to table this until there's a policy. I kind of, to take Donald Rumsfeld's position, I don't know what I don't know yet. I don't know what the legal implications are. I didn't even think about it till Mr. Unger mentioned it about how long do we save this footage? I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's not videotape anymore, but this digital footage, how long do we save it? Is it a public record? How do we redact it? How much will it cost? We get how many records requests in a year?
A lot.
331 in 2022.
What if we get 300 requests for film? I mean, we're going to have a whole photo shop of people cropping things out and stuff, and I think that these are all answers that we need to explore. And for that reason, I think maybe I don't want to turn my back on it, because it's a mechanism that a lot of people are using if used properly. I know that, for instance, Miami Township, Claremont County is in the middle of getting one, and they're writing a drone policy first before they buy the drone.
Okay, I agree with that, it's writing a drone policy.
Well, and
And just for a question, when you requested one of Hamilton County's drones, how fast did you get it? Was it a day or was it hours?
Within the same day,
it's-
and
We use one for Black Lives Matter.
well, right, and
But
so
like I
to
said, it's
clarify,
not-
it
it's-
wasn't I don't know that we've ever requested the sheriffs because theirs are relatively new. It typically has been through, say, the Hamilton County Fire Chiefs Association and
Blue Ash, the
from
one for the,
EMA. Yes,
So it's not like if we
The
have an
Blue Ash
emergency
Police Department-
situation, we can get
yes,
one from.
Blue
right
Ash
away, is all
Police
I'm
Department
saying.
has one that's part of that, as well as Woodlawn's Fire Department, so.
and Hamilton County happens to be, the sheriff's office happens to be in Colerain
Yes,
Township.
that is correct.
So we have them here in Colerain Township already. There's just, I would prefer to argue out a policy first before we ever considered this, and because we don't talk outside of meetings, I do have Hamilton County's policy, and I'll be happy to send it to you, and you can make it a part of the minutes of this meeting or whatever, and then that'll give us something to talk about down the road. I wish Chief was here, and I'm sorry that he's not, so.
So I made a motion to table this at this point, but it doesn't have a second, so I don't know if there's a second to table this till further.
Second to table it.
Are there, so then you'll call for discussion on table.
I think we discussed.
Well,
You want-
now you discuss on
I mean, do you
tabling it.
want to, do you have anything to
I
discuss?
don't have any discussion on tabling it, except I would prefer to vote it up or down. It can always come back at the next meeting as a new item, but just, if we vote it down right now, then we don't discuss it anymore during this meeting. It can always come back, but I just think we need to get a policy first, so,
There's a first and a second to table.
right.
Any other discussion?
None.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
I am voting no to table.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Board. We will table that item until we have a policy for you all to consider. The next item on the meeting is a motion to approve the 2023 regular meeting dates for the Board of Trustees and rules for special meetings. So just as a reminder, special meetings will be held as necessary and will be noticed a minimum of 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting. This notice will be sent to the news media, specifically the Cincinnati Enquirer. Just also wanted to note on this that we did include a special meeting or a regularly scheduled meeting for May 29th, which is Memorial Day, which would be before the Memorial Day services that we typically have at the corner of Springdale and Colerain. That would be at 9 a.m., and that would be primarily to handle any backlog of nuisance properties that may be popping up, as we do see a high volume of those in early May. So with that, I would recommend adoption of the motion.
I motion that we approve the 2023 regular meeting dates for the Board of Trustees and rules for special meetings.
I'll second that.
And I would just like to comment, Matt, I did ask Jeff to put that Monday morning one because it is a time we're together. I do have the resolution from last year. There were almost 40 properties, and I
Right.
understand you were uncomfortable with finding out a few days before the meeting. So that's why I thought, well, let's put it on in January. And, you know, if there's no big backlog, then we can just cancel the meeting. But since we can.
You're
only
right, there was
take-
over 40 on there, wasn't
Right,
there?
and
I was not aware that we were going to have that
but
until.
I specifically
Yeah,
did that
thank
because
you.
I know you were uncomfortable
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm much more comfortable with it being
Yeah,
upfront like that, yeah.
me too.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And
I appreciate that.
all the other dates, we don't have any interference with
Election.
the elections or anything, or when is the Ohio primary, or do we not know that yet?
Well, November 14th is
The-
still the second, that's,
Well, I can look that up.
I don't know if it's in
It's-
March
that's
or
the
May,
second.
or,
It's in May, I think, isn't it?
oh, what are we? We have
can
3
you
in
bring that
May?
list up? It wouldn't be March. We just, have they announced when the primary might be?
Maybe they haven't announced yet.
So at least in what I am pulling from the state of Ohio, it is saying that the primary would be on May 2nd.
Okay, well then.
So we're
Yeah,
fine,
May
we're fine
2nd.
in May.
And
May
as a
9th.
reminder, the November election will be on November 7th. So I believe we are
We're both,
good
we're
on
fine November 14th, so we're good with both dates.
Last year was the perfect storm to have a
Yep.
meeting on election day.
And based on what you've said right now, that won't be a conflict. So I'm fine with the rest of the list, if the other two trustees have anything on it.
I'm good. So we've discussed it, so we can call for a vote?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the continuation of employment and payment of part-time employees at their current rates. We adopt this motion every year just to continue to pay our part-time employees. So I recommend adoption of the motion.
I'll motion to approve
Employment.
the continuation of employment and payment of part-time employees at the current rates.
I'll second. Any discussion?
No discussion from me.
None?
None?
Ms. Orich?
Yes?
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a motion to appoint David Miller as representative and Tiffany Mays as the alternate to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, that's OKI, Regional Council of Governments, and that would be specifically for their Intermodal Coordinating Committee, known as the ICC. Mr. Miller was appointed to this role at the start of last year and has served well. I think he attended every meeting that they had, and that is where a lot of the funding that we receive for sidewalk projects flows through this committee first, and he was happy to make the either second or motion on the funding to award dollars for our pool road sidewalks that will be coming on in 2024, 2025. So I would recommend adoption of that motion.
I motion that we appoint David Miller as representative and Tiffany Mays as the alternate to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments Intermodal Coordinating Committee.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? It's a mouthful, but to the public, they both said yes. We're not appointing just them to something they don't want to do.
Yes.
If you all say they have to, we will make sure they are there.
Well, I think it's good for Tiffany to get down there and get her feet into it, and
I thought she went like this, didn't she?
yeah, she said she would love to.
Yeah.
So, no other comments from me.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a motion to authorize the Township Administrator to sign purchase orders equal to or less than $2,500. So just as a reminder, state law allows you all to delegate the authority to sign these up to $10,000. As a starting point, we thought it would make sense to include a motion for $2,500, and then we could have subsequent motions for other dollar amounts. But would like to introduce this one and recommend adoption of said motion.
I motion that we authorize the administrator to sign purchase orders equal to or less than $2,500.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yes, I did go back and look at our organizational meeting agendas going back for the years I've been here, and that is what we have done every year. And that gives the trustees the opportunity to watch what's going on here, and ultimately, the three of us are the ones that are responsible for purchases. Most of our expenditures are for salaries and other items, and we've approved, I can't think of when we didn't approve anything except that drone, but other than that, we've pretty much let you and your predecessor run the place, but I think it's a great idea for the trustees to have the opportunity to approve these odd purchases that fall into that range.
So obviously, this is a discussion that we have every year, and this is how government works. The administration feels it should be a higher amount, and the legislative branch says no. And I'm comfortable with, like Mr. Unger said, I'm comfortable with where we've been the last several years I've been on the board with the $2,500 level.
I'm just, with the prices going up, and I'm just looking at these we've got 40, 20, 10. We have one here under 2,500. That's where I'm thinking, shouldn't we raise it a little bit?
Well, the ones that are under 2,500, he can go ahead and
Well,
sign.
there's this one's 27, sorry. I looked at the last bottom. But we don't get, with the price of things going up higher, I think 2,500 could go up a little bit higher. I'm just throwing that out there.
And
Yes,
then
sir, they go to you.
So if it helps, given that the next motion is for a different dollar amount, we can certainly have a vote on this motion and then have a different discussion on a different dollar amount after this. If you approve one, that doesn't mean that you can't approve a different dollar amount that is higher or lower.
You're going to keep begging, aren't you?
I'm just throwing that out there for conversation.
I'm comfortable with the 2,500. When I saw the original draft agenda last week, not knowing how my other two trustees were going to vote, I asked to have item J put on there. So if this fails, then we would put them all on the consent agenda. And I don't intend to if we can get this to pass on item H, then I don't intend to pursue item I or item J, so.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mr. Unger on this. I get it that you guys wanted it a higher amount. It's just, and I also understand that there's some administrative things that we could work out and be up here signing more frequently, and I think that's a discussion we can have as well. But I support the $2,500 level.
No other discussion from me.
Well, it's 2 out of 3, so
We got a vote.
Ms. Ulrich?
I'm going to say no. I would
Mr.
have
Unger?
it higher.
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. I understand that this next item may not get a motion in second, but the next item on the agenda is a motion to authorize the Township Administrator to sign purchase orders equal or less to $10,000. We did just have a lot of conversation around this. My request is sort of to what Matt just said, that to the extent that this does not occur, that we just all try to be as diligent as we can at signing purchase orders as frequently as we can, so that we don't have them stack up and that we're able to address issues as quickly as we can from an operational efficiency standpoint. There's other language in this agenda item, but with that, I'll finish introducing the motion and recommend adoption and see if we get a motion in second.
Need a motion?
No, I'm not going to motion for it.
All right. Sounds like that is probably good.
It's a,
You're the president. It's your idea. Motion for it.
well,
See what happens.
I know what's going to happen. Since there's no motion, do we get to discuss it? I just would like Mr. Wetbach to tell us why 10,000, to give a couple incidents that happened earlier this year, that why the need to up your,
From
You have to get it to the floor to have that discussion.
I said I motioned. but I
Okay, I'll
needed-
second it to get it to the floor.
To get it to the floor.
So to answer Ms. Ulrich's question about why, typically when we have emergencies that pop up, especially related to our facilities, the dollar value of those repairs is not oftentimes less than $2,500. I'm sure as you think about your own home, if you have, say, your water heater go out, or you have your HVAC unit go out, and you maybe need to do a large-scale replacement, not just a minor repair, but something more significant, odds are that's probably going to cost more than $2,500.
And at that point, the trustees should know about it based on what we've just passed.
Sure, and I guess what I'm getting at is from an operational efficiency standpoint, being able to make sure that we get that signed as fast as possible so we don't potentially go without heat.
Twice a week, as you know.
Yes.
And there have been times, and I think specifically with police, where I've gotten a text or a message saying, you need to get up here within 24 hours. We need your signature desperately on this. And I've always been able to do that. So I don't want to leave you in the lurch on these kind of things, but I think, at least from my view, the responsibility to the voters is to make sure that we're accounting for as much as possible. I know that, like $48 million budget, well, what's a $5,000 expense? I mean, it's still something that kind of we're responsible for at the end of the day, and that's, I know that it's not as efficient as it can be, and I get why you and Mr. Mills and probably the people before you push for that. And it's not that I don't trust the people here, it's that I don't trust the people that are going to follow us. And I think setting that precedent now would be something that maybe in the future we might regret. I don't know, but at this point, I'm just comfortable with that. But you and I can have a discussion on how we can be more efficient in getting it signed.
Yeah, and so, like I said, I think the key here is just making sure that the frequency stays there with the trustees as the year goes on, because there isn't a day that goes by that I don't see a purchase order that fits within this criteria.
Right.
How many purchase orders did you might not know this answer, but how many purchase orders do we issue a year?
So there's usually somewhere between 500 and 1,000 a year. So, that's at least 1 to 4 a day.
Right, and where are those, the ones that are, and I would think because of it's a smaller dollar amount, most of those don't ever get to us.
I'd say, and we haven't done the math on it, but a lot of them do fall above the $2,500 amount just by the nature of the way things cost these days.
Right.
So there is a significant amount that go through the trustee mailbox. The smaller ones that typically are signed by the administrator are the ones that are for things like office supplies on a one-off, or a credit card purchase related to having to go to Home Depot to pick up lumber or something to that effect. So.
Right. And I've learned a lot by seeing the ones that are just over 2,500, like the new desk and everything we bought, which I thought were pretty highly priced until I looked around and saw what they cost. But, I'd like to know about stuff like that.
Sure.
And that's why I supported item H.
Mm-hmm.
So it was motioned and seconded.
You need a second, but
Well, then I guess if there was second, we have to call a vote.
Ms. Orich?
I guess it's a big old fat no.
Mr. Unger?
No.
Mr. Waller?
no.
Thank you, Board. So the next item on the agenda is a motion requiring the Township Administrator to place all purchase orders of $0 to $10,000 on the consent agenda. Trustee Unger kind of spoke to this earlier, so I think based on those comments, this one may or may not be another one that does or does not have a motion or second. So I will leave that introduction short and sweet.
Well, and I will go ahead, because I asked to have it on there, I will go ahead and motion to require to place all purchase orders from 0 to 10,000 on the consent agenda, but because we've approved item H, I don't really see a need for it because we have the check and balance in place.
Now, I'll second it if anybody has anything to say about it.
I'm very pleased, Matt, that you supported me on item H as you've done in previous years, and I think that gives the trustees the right level of oversight on these items.
I guess we call a vote. Are you done with this discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to, since it was Mr. Unger's, I wanted to put that for discussion.
Ms. Orich?
No.
Mr. Unger?
No.
Mr. Waller?
No.
Yeah, that just saves you a lot of work, didn't it?
A little bit of work, yes. All right, so the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the expenditure of public monies for, and this is in quotation marks, coffee, meals, refreshments, or other amenities. The auditor of state provided us guidance at an audit within the past couple of years, basically stating that they would like to see a resolution annually from the Board of Trustees that just lists out the items that we have in the budget, line itemed out for purposes of special events where we may need to buy volunteers food, or we may need to supply food for the actual event itself. So with that introduction, I will recommend adoption of the resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
I'll go ahead and motion for a resolution authorizing the expenditure of public monies for coffee, meals, refreshments, or other amenities.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
And that is primarily for volunteers.
Primarily, yes.
We did have a veterans dinner that
Yes.
was last year, and that came out of that.
Yes.
And we have Recycle Day, and we have other events where
Yes.
we,
And the way that we worded this is we tried to think of any circumstance where we may need to purchase food. So, like, for example, when you look into item 1 of the now therefores, we included things like the fireworks. So let's say we have something crazy happen and all the food trucks stop being able to serve people at the fireworks, and we've got
2 years ago.
3,000 to 4,000 hungry people there. Well, this would provide us with the authority that if we needed to, on a moment's notice, purchase food, we would be able to. But if there was an event that we didn't think of, we would not be allowed without further trustee
And
action.
there's specific events that were
Yes.
detailed that happened in 2022 for this.
That is correct.
And this is not for day-to-day, none of that food gets delivered here to the office, so to say, because it's not for day-to-day employee meals. It's for very specific special events and
Correct. And not all these events have a budget assigned to them. And that was kind of my point that I was making with, say, the fireworks, is that there aren't dollars assigned to that. So that's just there as a placeholder in the off chance that the perfect storm arrived and we needed to do something, we would have the ability to.
I did see somewhere, but I can't pull it up, that you specified the Veterans Day was $4,000.
That was the budget for it last year.
Yeah, that was in the budget. I
and
just
this
can't
year.
put it on my screen, so I was just to tell the public, it's already in print,
Yes.
what we do spend.
All
and
these
they're
are listed in the budget on a line-by-line basis, and if they are not listed, that means there are not dollars set aside for these events.
and
Go ahead.
the main purpose of this is the auditor advised us to have this as a part of the
Yes.
the findings in the audit, so we're following
Yeah.
the guidance that we've received, and
Yes, sir.
therefore we have it.
So I see donuts, but not bagels. Could you please explain that discretion?
I do not see that on here.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not a part of this.
Meals, refreshments. So, I guess if a bagel could be considered part of a meal or
Okay.
refreshment. So, yes. This was that part of the clause was directly from the auditor. So, I guess they just prefer to eat donuts at the State House.
Well, we've passed, it's up for a vote, and you've detailed it out, and
Yep.
we've talked about it over the past 2 weeks. I have no other comments on it. I think it's important that we acknowledge that we do provide coffee and occasionally snacks or meals for volunteers. And this is a big township, and if you added up everybody who's volunteered for something over the past year, they don't get paid for it. This is the little bit of hospitality that we provide.
That's correct.
Coffee with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
One of the most popular items we have is coffee with the Chiefs. It's not, water with the Chiefs or bring your own food with the Chiefs.
I have no other discussion.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. And the final item on the agenda today is the motion to approve the 2023 payroll calendar. We do this as best practice so that you all can see all the different pay dates, holidays, and what have you. The holidays listed on the payroll calendar are per state law, save for the contractually negotiated ones that maybe differ. For example, all the employees that are in the CBA and the fire department have negotiated to have Patriots Day instead of Columbus Day as a holiday. So Patriot Day, not Patriots Day, as we learned there's a distinction between the two, but Patriot Day is actually September 11th. So that was something that the fire department employees felt strongly enough about that they were willing to give up Columbus Day in exchange. So with that introduction, I will recommend adoption of the motion.
I motion that we approve the 2023 payroll calendar.
I'll second that.
Discussion, I do believe the only thing, like you just said, is the Patriots Day, and we just put Juneteenth on there this year, correct? Or was that on?
It's federally
Yeah,
mandated.
so that is,
It's
that's,
federally and state.
I'm just telling the public
Yeah,
that that's
so-
about the only two changes on there.
And to clarify, the state does set per state law what township holidays are for our non-contract staff. So our policy book references to state law, and that just makes it cleaner for all of us.
I'm fine with that holiday. The state and federal government need to recognize that every time, and I think there'll be more coming,
Yes.
that it cost us.
About
what- what's it
$100,000,
cost to
a little over
pay
100?
200, or
What was
however
that?
many employees we have holiday pay.
Yeah. And I could see in the future where Patriot Day may become a federal holiday.
Which
at
is,
some
you know,
point.
we celebrate all those.
Yes.
But every time that happens, it costs the township, another day's salary for everybody.
That's correct.
And we have a large payroll budget, and, they don't send a check along with that, they just send the mandate to pay people for it.
It's an unfunded mandate, which both the state and federal government are good at giving us those.
No other comments on the motion?
No other discussion?
Nope.
Okay.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Chair, if I
Thank you,
could
Board.
mention something, it was 4 years ago tomorrow that Jeff Mills called me up and mentioned to get down to University Hospital, and it was it's the darkest day in my 20 years of public service was when Dale Woods was hit by an automobile, and that was, I didn't want to let tonight's meeting go without mentioning that, so.
I don't have it in front of me, but we are honoring Dale Woods Saturday, the 7th.
Saturday the 7th at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, Saturday at 2 p.m. Yes, in the rotunda.
In the Rotunda. If anybody would like to come up, you're more than welcome.
And congratulations, Kathy, on
Oh,
stepping
gee.
up. I supported you, and
Thank you,
I think
Daniel.
It's good to have the presidency rotate.
I can't wait to bang this. I mean here, not
That's why I'm sitting as far away.
sitting far as away as you can from me.
I have no other comments.
Okay, we're good?
Yep. I motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
And so we will adjourn at 7.
wait, vote.
I'm sorry, we got to vote, do that vote thing. I hit 7:53, there we go.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Okay, it's still 7:53. We're adjourned.